Hi there, I'm Pate Fenza from Cuisine 4D, and today we'll be animating beads to reveal the number of this year, without dynamics. Okay, let's start with a sphere. Let's see. I'm going to make it a bit smaller, like 15. And I'm holding my Alt key and I'm clicking on cloner to make it a child of a cloner. So as you can see, the cloner is making a grid full of spheres. And I'm going to rename it to cloner guides, because these spheres will serve as a guide later on. Let's change the color to a green. Okay, I'm going to change the count to 7 and 5, and I'm going to change the sizes to 50. Alright, now I'm going to MoGraph selection, and now I'm going to select all spheres that will not be part of our design. Let's see. First the column in the middle. And let's see, to make a 2 I don't need these two and I don't need these two. And I'm holding my shift key here to select even more. Okay, let's go to MoGraph and let's click on hide selected. And as you can see, we now only have the number 23. Let's switch to top view. Okay, I'm going to draw a spline, but I need quantizing for it. So let's check enable quantizing. I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to work my way up. And quantizing is helping me making perfect straight corners. There we go. I use my escape key to close the spline. And I'm using my middle mouse button to switch to all views. Now I need an end and a start to this spline, so let's click on the last point of this spline. And I'm hovering my mouse over the right view, so I can move it straight down. Still using quantizing here. And let's make a start to our spline as well. So I'll drag down. But as you can see, I'm pressing my escape key here. As you can see, for some reason this spline will snap back to the Z-axis. What you can do, I'm pressing my Ctrl Z to undo a couple of times and I'm pressing my escape key. Now I'm going to select all points using my Ctrl A key and I'm going to right click and pick point order reverse sequence. It appears that each spline has a direction and now I've reversed the direction, which makes it possible for me to add a start to this spline as well. Let's see. And since this will be the start of the sequence, I will make it a bit longer. Okay, let's go back to perspective view and I can disable my quantizing. So to chamfer all corners of this spline, I will use a free plugin called CV Splines to Objects. I will put the link below. So what I can do is I will select my spline, I will go to extensions, let's see, CV Splines to Objects, and I'm holding my Alt key here while I'm pressing the CV chamfer. And there you go, you get round corners. Wow. I will change the radius to 25. Since those spheres will be moving along the spline, it's important that they are all moving at the same speed. And currently when I right click CV chamfer and I choose current state to object, I can see that I will run into a problem. Because when I now go to my points, you will see that those points are real close to each other, but the next point after this one is pretty far away. This will cause changes in speed later on, so we need to give the spline uniform distances between its points. I'm going to delete this chamfer and I'm going to enable the original one. Let's see, so when I select my spline, I will set intermediate points to uniform and I will set the number to 64 points. When I now choose current state to object, let's see, I'm going to hide the original one again. You can see that there are equal distances between all points. Okay, I can delete this one now and I will go back to our original one again. I will make an instance of this sphere. And let's move it out of the way a bit. Like over there. And I'm going to put it inside of a cloner of its own. So let's see, you got a new grid here. I could set the mode of this cloner to object and then clone onto the spline. But this would give me a problem. I will hide the cloner guides for now, because now all the clones have the same intermediate distances. So I have to set the mode to linear instead. I will set the y-axis to 0 and I will work with the z-axis. Okay, when I now enable our clones, I've counted 22 spheres here. So let's put our count to 22. I can hide these guides for now. And I will put our new cloner inside of a null. I'm using my Alt-G key here. Let's switch to Geroid shading with lines. And I will make a spline wrap using my Shift key here. This spline wrap will wrap all these spheres onto this spline here. So let's see what happens when I put my CV chamfer inside of the spline. And won't you look at that? That's not working at all. Oh, no problem. Let's switch the axis to +Z. Okay, this is looking a bit better now, but the problem is together these spheres have a certain length and this spline is a bit longer. So now it will stretch all these spheres to fit onto the spline. But I want to keep the original length, so I will set mode to keep length. I want them to look up as well, so I'm going to change the rotation to x-axis. Let's see. And there is a new problem coming up. All clones are a bit distorted, as you see, especially near the bends. But we will fix that later. Okay, let's make the cloner editable so I can customize the position of the spheres. Now I need my guides again, so let's enable them. And I'm going to switch back to top view. I need to align the first sphere using the offset. I can use my arrow keys up and down. These steps are a bit too large for me. Oh well. I'm also using my left and right arrow keys here to make even smaller increments. Okay, the first sphere is set. Now I'm going to select the last sphere. Let's see. There it is. We have to remember that even though these spheres are wrapped onto this spline, they're actually still inside of this cloner here on the top left. So what I will now do is move them inside the cloner up and down, which will move them along the spline here. So I will press the E key for transform. I will press my X and my Y key, so I can only move along the Z axis when I move my mouse. Let's see. There we go. Now we only need to align the center of each sphere on top of the guides. I will fast forward for you so you don't have to sit through all of this. These last 5 are already in place. Okay, I'll select my null here. I'll now add a fracture object to the scene, because it will make MoGraph objects of these spheres. Let's move all spheres inside of the fracture. Let's set our timeline to 200 frames. Let's go to the spline wrap and set a keyframe for the offset at 150. Let's go to the first keyframe and set our offset to 100% and make another keyframe. We can hide our clones now. And let's see what happens when I play the animation. It appears to be working, but when you look closer you can see that the spheres are still distorted. So let's add a plane. I will set it to 10 centimeters, just a single segment for each axis. Let's set it to the z-axis. To prevent the distortion of the spheres, I have to replace all spheres with this plane. Now you know why I used instances. As you can see, some planes are a bit off now, but it's an easy fix. I'll just go back to top view. I will enable my guides again. And I will change my offset. This happens sometimes. Let's see. There we go. I'll hide my guides again. Yep, they're in the right spot. The reason that I chose planes is that I can clone onto them with a matrix object. So let's add one. Let's set its mode to object. And the object will be the fracture, containing all of our planes. I will set the distribution to polygon center, and I will give it a red color. I can now hide our fracture, hide our plane. I'm using my control button here to make a copy of the sphere. The matrices will give me the exact position of each sphere without being distorted. So now I can clone onto them using a new cloner. I'm going to set the cloner to object. And I'm going to use the matrix as the object to be cloned upon. Let's switch the shading again. And when I now play the animation, you can see everything is working properly without distortion. If you want to hide the spheres in the back, you can just go to fracture and set the mode to explode segments and connect. And you can also hide the spline wrap. To make a real of our spline, I'm going to make an instance of the CV chamfer. Let's see. And I will need an end side for that as well. With a radius of 2. And I'll give it 16 sides. Next I'm going to need a sweep object. And I'll put both my end side and my CV chamfer instance inside of the sweep. Wow, would you look at that? So the last thing we can do is add a floor. Let's see. Let's make it much bigger. And let's lower it a bit. Okay. I'm going to disable my work plane. And I'm going to add a cylinder as well. I'm going to use my middle mouse button to switch to top view to position it properly. Let's make it a bit smaller. Yeah, that'll do. Let's put it down a bit. And give it a few more rotation segments, like 64, to make it a bit rounder. And I can add a bool object. So let's put both the cylinder and the plane inside of the bool. There we go. Wow, this looks great. With the F-curve mode, you can also add a bit more easy ease to the animation. Let's see. Okay, I'm pressing my H key here, so I can see my entire animation. Let's click the first keyframe here, and let's drag it down. Let's see what it does. Oh, this is much better. That's it for today. And of course you can review any character with this technique. I think you could even make a marble track. Well, merci beaucoup, and I'll see you next time.